I always wondered what the exact moment was, the moment when my parents decided that my future was expendable. Was it the day my little sister, Lily, was born and everyone said she was special? Was it the afternoon our mother held her hand while telling me, without hesitation, to step aside? Or was it that night, just 2 days before my 18th birthday, when my father stood in the doorway of my bedroom and told me to pack my things? My name is Ava Morgan, and this is the story of how being abandoned by my own family became the reason I learned how to rise. Before we begin, if you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or pushed aside by the people who are supposed to protect you, then this story may hit closer than you expect. And if it does, leave a comment. I read every single one. Make sure to subscribe for more stories like this, because this channel is where silent voices finally get heard. Alright, let's start at the beginning. My parents were never cruel. Not at first. That's what made everything so confusing. Growing up, I was the quiet one, the child who did what she was told, brought home good grades, reminded my mom about dentist appointments, cooked dinner when they came home late. I thought being dependable meant being loved. I thought being useful meant being valued. But in my family, usefulness was currency, and my sister was the golden investment. Lily was born when I was 10. She had curls like spun gold, a voice that charmed teachers instantly, and a kind of soft, natural charisma that made adults predict big things for her. She's gifted, my mom would whisper proudly at dinner parties, while I served drinks and collected plates. She's meant for great things. They never said I wasn't meant for anything. They didn't need to. Their silence filled in all the blanks. By the time I enter high school, the favoritism wasn't subtle, it was baked into the wallpaper of our home. Lily got private tutors. I got hand-me-down textbooks. Lily went to summer arts camps. I worked part-time at a diner to help cover bills. My parents said it wasn't favoritism, it was strategy. Lily had potential. Lily had a future. And futures cost money. I kept my head down. I kept going. I swallowed heartbreak in small, digestible bites. But everything snapped into place horribly, painfully on that cold spring evening when I walked into the living room and found my parents sitting stiffly on the couch, waiting for me. "Ava, sit down," my father said. I knew that tone, the heavy seriousness, the decision already made before I entered the room. My mother folded her hands like she was bracing herself. "We've been reviewing our finances," she started. "College, programs, Lily's upcoming scholarship interviews. The costs are adding up." My stomach twisted. "Okay, and—" My father inhaled sharply, like the next words hurt him to speak. "Ava, we can't afford to support 2 daughters anymore." I blinked. "What does that mean?" Mom didn't soften her voice. She didn't reach for my hand. "It means we need you to understand your role. You're 18. You're capable of working full-time. Lily needs every advantage we can give her." I sat frozen. My heartbeat felt like splintered glass in my chest. "You want me to what?" I whispered. Dad cleared his throat. "Move out. Start taking care of yourself. It's time." I laughed because the alternative was screaming. "You're kicking me out? For her? For Lily?" My mom's lips tightened. "This isn't about favoritism. It's about the future of this family." "Whose future?" I shot back. "Because it clearly isn't mine." My father stood, ended the conversation with finality. "You have 2 days, Ava. We expect the room cleared." I remember stepping outside into the cold night air, feeling my childhood dissolve behind me like smoke. I wasn't crying yet. I was too shocked to cry. Upstairs, Lily's bedroom light glowed warm and golden. She was practicing lines for a theater audition, her voice drifting like a pretty melody down the hallway. She had no idea what was happening. Or maybe she did. Maybe she always knew she was the chosen one. The next morning, she knocked on my door. "Ava? Mom said you're moving out. Is that true?" Her voice held worry, but also something else, naive relief, maybe, or the kind of innocence only people with safety nets are allowed to have. "Yes," I said quietly. "It's true. Will you be okay?" I hesitated. "I don't know." She hugged me, soft and fragile. "I'll miss you." And she meant it. That was the worst part. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't the villain. She was just the reason. When I left home with 2 suitcases and a duffel bag, my mother hugged me but didn't ask where I would sleep that night. My father loaded my things into an Uber, but didn't offer money for rent. They didn't look ashamed. They looked relieved. Necessary sacrifice. Strategic decision. Family future. That was the language they lived in. I got a room in a rundown house shared with 2 other young women who were also thrown into adulthood too soon. I worked at a grocery store during the day and attended community college at night. I ate dollar store noodles. I walked everywhere because I couldn't afford a bus pass at first. I cried in bathroom stalls more than I want to admit. But I kept going. Because at some point somewhere between scraping coins together for laundry and studying under flickering fluorescent lights, I realized something. No one was coming to save me. But maybe I could save myself. I studied relentlessly. I applied for every scholarship I could find, even the weird ones about left-handed students or people who liked astronomy. I switched jobs to an office assistant position, then to an internship. I learned how to be dependable not for my parents, but for myself. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, my life began to change. By 23, I had climbed my way into a junior hiring coordinator role at a major corporate firm, nothing glamorous, but solid. Respectable. Mine. I had a tiny studio apartment, a small circle of loyal friends, and a sense of pride I had never felt growing up. But life has a twisted sense of humor. Or maybe it was fate. Or maybe karma finally knocked politely on my door and whispered, "Ready." Either way, I will never forget the morning I opened my laptop, coffee in hand, and saw the list of scheduled applicants for that week's entry-level program. And there it was. Lily Morgan, my sister, applying to the very company I now helped hire for. I stared at her name until the screen blurred. 5 years of silence, 5 years of building, healing, growing collapsed into that single moment. Was she struggling? Had their investment not paid off? Had the golden daughter discovered that charisma wasn't enough in the real world? I didn't know. All I knew was that on Friday at 10:30 a.m., my little sister would walk into a glass meeting room and sit across from me. Not as family, but as an applicant. And I would be the one evaluating her worth. When Friday finally arrived, I woke up before my alarm. Not because I was nervous, though maybe I should have been, but because something inside me felt suspended, like the air had changed density overnight. I moved through my morning routine mechanically. Coffee, a neat bun, a charcoal suit that made me look more confident than I felt. At 10:15 a.m., I walked into the interview room, a glass-walled box overlooking the city. The skyline stretched out like a reminder of how far I had climbed without anyone's hand but my own. I placed the applicant folder on the table. Her name stared back at me. Lily Morgan. I inhaled deeply, steadying myself. She didn't know I would be here. She didn't know I had spent years stitching myself back together. She didn't know that the sister she once hugged goodbye in a dim hallway had survived. At 10:29, I heard footsteps approaching. Quiet, hesitant. The door opened, and there she was. My sister stood in the doorway, dressed in a pale blue blouse, hair pulled back in an attempt at professionalism. But her eyes, those bright, hopeful eyes from childhood, dimmed the second she saw me. "Ava," she whispered, the word cracking. "Hi, Lily," I said softly. Steady, professional, controlled. For a moment, everything froze. 5 years of distance collapsed into that tiny conference room, heavy and suffocating, pressing against the glass walls like the past demanding to be acknowledged. She shut the door behind her slowly. I didn't know you worked here." "That makes 2 of us," I replied. "I didn't know you were applying." She sat down, hands trembling slightly. I recognized that nervousness. It was the same nervousness I felt when I was 18 and alone. Except she had never truly been alone. I opened the folder. "Well, let's begin." Her resume was tidy but thin. A few short-term jobs. A dropped-out university semester. A string of activities that looked good on paper but lacked depth. The kind of resume that came from someone who had been praised but not prepared. I lifted my gaze. Tell me why you want this position. Her throat bobbed. I need stability. I need to start over. Start over? I repeated, even though the question was obvious. She exhaled shakily. Things haven't exactly gone the way Mom and Dad planned. Ah. There it was. The fracture in the golden pedestal. She twisted her hands. They spent everything on my programs. The acting academies, the private coaches, the competitions, but none of it worked out. I didn't get the scholarship they expected. I didn't land the roles they thought I would. And they're struggling now. How badly? Asked before I could stop myself. Bad enough that they said I need to pull my own weight. She let out a broken laugh. They said it like I wasn't already trying. Something inside me shifted, not pity, but recognition. The same language, the same pressure, the same expectation to sacrifice for the so-called family future. Except this time, the chosen daughter was the one being pushed out of the nest. When she looked up at me, I saw fear. And underneath that shame, Ava, she whispered, voice trembling. I'm so sorry. Her apology hit me harder than I expected. My throat tightened. For what? I asked carefully. For everything. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't understand what they were doing to you. I didn't see it. I thought they loved us both, just in different ways. I swallowed a bitter laugh. Love doesn't force a child onto the street to fund another's dream. She flinched. This moment, this raw, trembling exchange felt like the first honest conversation we'd ever had. I didn't know, she repeated softly. I should have. I was selfish. I let them treat me like I mattered more, and I never questioned it. I studied her, not as the girl who replaced me in my own home, but as a young woman who was finally facing the world without the padding of favoritism. I asked the next question like any interviewer would. Why should we hire you? She hesitated, then spoke quietly. Because I'm ready to work for something for the first time in my life. Because I want to prove that I'm more than my parents' expectations. Because I don't want to be someone's project anymore. There was something sincere in her words, something I recognized because I had lived it, bled through it, survived it. The interview continued. I kept it neutral, professional. But inside, memories tugged at me like ghosts late night studying, scraping together rent money. The sting of being told I was expendable. And yet, as she spoke, I felt something unexpected. Not triumph. Not satisfaction. Something closer to closure. Not because she needed help, but because I no longer needed anything from her or from the parents who abandoned me. When the interview ended, she rose slowly. Ava. Yes. Her voice quivered. Can we talk sometime? Outside of this? I want to know you again. If you'll let me. A part of me ached. Another part felt numb. And another part, one I wasn't ready to face yet, felt a fragile, almost imperceptible sense of hope. We'll see, I said gently. Let's take one step at a time. She nodded, blinking back tears. She left the room with her shoulders slightly straighter, as if simply surviving the conversation was a victory. When the door closed behind her, I sank back into my chair. The city stretched beyond the glass, vibrant and alive. A reminder that life keeps moving, even when the people you once loved try to hold you in place or push you out entirely. I didn't know then whether she'd get the job. That depended on more than my influence. But I did know one thing with absolute clarity. My worth was no longer tied to her success, her future, or our parents' cruel calculus. My life wasn't a sacrifice. It wasn't a bargaining chip. It was mine. Later that afternoon, I stepped into the elevator, still carrying the weight of the encounter like an echo. As the doors began to close, I heard someone call my name. Ava. I turned. It was Lily, eyes wide, breathless. Please, can I tell you something before you go? I held the door. What is it? Her voice shook, each word heavy with years of unspoken truth. Mom and Dad told me not to mention you during the interview. They told me to stay professional and that you might hold a grudge. But when I saw you, I realized they never understood you. My pulse slowed. What do you mean? She wiped her tears. They thought pushing you out would make me stronger. But all it did was break us. And it broke them too, even if they won't admit it. I exhaled, tension draining slowly. That wasn't your burden to carry. Maybe not, she whispered, but it became mine anyway. There was something undeniably vulnerable in her voice, something I had never heard from her in our childhood home where she was always the golden girl, always shielded from consequence. And for the first time ever, I saw my sister not as a rival, not as the reason for my displacement, but as another casualty of our parents' misguided decisions. Ava, she said, voice barely above a whisper, I don't expect forgiveness.
Not now.
Maybe not ever. But I want you to know that losing you, it hurt me too. My eyes stung, but I kept myself steady. We'll talk. Just not today. She nodded, accepting my boundary with a maturity I didn't expect. The elevator doors closed between us, but this time, it didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like a beginning. A complicated one. A fragile one. But a beginning nonetheless. The week after Lily's interview felt strangely quiet, like the calm after a storm you didn't realize you had survived. Work went on as usual, meetings, emails, onboarding schedules, the same office chatter that filled the hallways every weekday. But underneath the routine, something in me had shifted. For years, my past had been a shadow trailing me. A bruise I'd learned to cover. A wound I kept pretending had healed. But seeing her vulnerable, earnest, stripped of the pedestal our parents built for her had cracked something open in me. Not pain. Not anger. Something closer to understanding. Still, when the hiring committee met to finalize the selections, I held my breath. We evaluated every applicant equally. Lily didn't get favoritism, but she didn't get punishment either. She performed decently in the group exercises. Her references were genuine. Her work samples showed effort, not brilliance, but sincerity. And for an entry-level program, sincerity is sometimes enough. Ava, my manager said, glancing at the stack of files, you interviewed this one Ava Morgan. What's your impression? The entire room looked at me. I felt my pulse in my throat. I could have ended her chances with a single sentence. I could have protected myself, insulated my heart, built walls so high no one from my past could ever climb them again. But then I remembered her trembling voice, her whispered apology, the raw honesty in her eyes when she said she didn't want to be her parents' project anymore. She's inexperienced, I said calmly, but she's teachable. And she's determined. I think she deserves a chance. My manager nodded. Then she's in. Just like that. Not revenge. Not karma. Just a chance. And sometimes, that's the bravest thing you can offer another person, even if it's someone who represents your deepest hurt. I emailed her the acceptance letter personally. 2 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Lily. Ava, is this real?
Me, yes.
Congratulations. Lily, thank you. Truly. For everything. Her gratitude wasn't exaggerated. It wasn't performative. It was quiet. Honest. The kind that carries weight because it exists without expectation. On her first day, she arrived earlier than even I did. She wore a navy blazer slightly too big for her, clutching a notebook filled with color-coded tabs. Her steps were unsure, but her eyes held purpose. When she saw me, she gave a small smile. Not the bright, confident smile of the golden child, but the humbled smile of someone rebuilding themselves from the inside. Morning, I said. Morning, she echoed. I don't want you to feel like you have to take care of me. That surprised me. I don't, I assured her. We're coworkers here. You'll get guidance from the team like everyone else. She nodded quickly. Good. That's what I want. And she meant it. Over the next weeks, I watched her not as a judge, not as a sister searching for old wounds, but as a mentor evaluating a young professional. She worked hard, harder than I expected. She stayed late, asked questions, took notes during meetings even when no one else bothered. She wasn't exceptional, but she was dedicated. And that, more than anything, reminded me how deeply she wanted to redefine herself. But the personal side, that was slower. Every few days, she'd ask softly, "Do you want to get coffee after work?" And every time, I told her the truth. Not yet. Not out of spite, but because healing has its own pace. One afternoon, about 6 weeks into her new position, she approached my desk, hesitating. "Can we talk?" Not work-related. I studied her expression, nervous, hopeful. I nodded toward a quiet alcove near the windows overlooking the city. She took a breath. "Mom and Dad, they don't know you work here. Or that you hired me." I stiffened. I figured. They asked about my job, but they didn't ask how I got it.
They didn't ask about you.
I think they avoid saying your name. My chest tightened, not from longing, but from the realization that my parents still lived in a world built on denial. "That's their choice," I said calmly. "Not yours." She looked down at her hands. "Ava, I don't want to hide you. Not anymore. And I don't want them to keep pretending you don't exist." Her voice wavered. "Can I tell them?" The question pierced deeper than I expected. 5 years ago, I'd begged for acknowledgement. I'd begged for love. Now, I didn't need it. But hearing my sister ask permission, respect, consideration felt like closing a chapter that had long remained open. "You can tell them," I said quietly. "But don't expect anything from them on my behalf. I'm not a secret they need to resolve. I'm just someone who grew up." Her eyes shimmered. "You deserved better." "We both did," I replied gently. She nodded, wiping her cheek quickly so no one passing by would see. A month later, Lily asked again if I'd get coffee with her. This time I said yes. We sat in a tiny cafe near the office, the kind with mismatched mugs and indie music humming softly in the background. She ordered chamomile tea. I ordered black coffee. She wrapped her hands around the warm cup like she needed its comfort before speaking. "They didn't take it well," she said suddenly. I raised an eyebrow. "Who?" "Mom and Dad. When I told them you were the one who interviewed me and hired me, they went silent. Completely silent." She let out a bitter laugh. Then they started saying things like, "Well, maybe she finally appreciates everything we did for her." Cold anger flickered in me, not the burning rage of old wounds, but the protective fire of someone who has outgrown her chains. "I don't owe them anything," I said firmly. "I know," Lily whispered. "And I told them that. I told them you succeeded because of yourself, not because of them." Her voice grew stronger. "And then I told them that what they did to you was wrong." My breath hitched. "You said that?"
Yes.
It was the first time I've ever challenged them. They didn't like it, but I don't care anymore. I'm tired of being who they want. I want to be someone I can live with. I stared at her, really stared at her. Not as the girl who used to take the larger slice of cake because our mother handed it to her. Not as the teenager surrounded by tutors and praise. But as a woman truly trying to rebuild her sense of self. "You're allowed to grow," I said finally. "Even if it took longer. Even if it hurt along the way." Tears pooled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "Ava, do you think one day we could be sisters again?" My voice softened. "We already are. But we're figuring out what that means now." Silence settled softly between us. A healing kind of silence. Months passed. Lily became a reliable part of the team. Her confidence grew, not the fragile, performative confidence our parents fed her, but a quiet strength she built herself. And as for us, we grew too. Slowly, deliberately, carefully. We started having lunch together occasionally, then weekly. Then she invited me to her apartment, small, modest, but entirely hers. She showed me the plants she was trying and failing to keep alive, her attempt at budgeting, the little artwork she was proud of. One night, as we walked out of the office, she said something that stayed with me. "You know, maybe they kicked out the wrong daughter." I stopped in my tracks. Maybe they just didn't know how to love either of us the right way. She nodded. "But you learned how to love yourself." "That's something I'm still working on." I smiled softly. "You'll get there." Because I believed it. Truly. Years ago, my parents made a choice, one that broke our family. But I made a choice too. I chose to survive. I chose to grow. I chose to let go, not to erase the past, but to free my future. And Lily chose to step out of the shadow she never asked for. Our story isn't perfect. It isn't clean. It isn't tied up with a bow, but it's real. And sometimes real is better than perfect, because real is what heals. Before I end this story, if you've ever been the forgotten child, the underestimated one, the one forced to carry the weight of someone else's future, I hope you hear this. Your worth is not determined by the people who failed to see it. Your future is yours, and you are allowed to rise. If this story resonated with you, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your experiences, your strength. And if you want more stories of resilience, betrayal, and beautiful revenge through self-growth, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notifications. I'm Ava Morgan. Thank you for listening.